And it's Wednesday night, just like that. Once you play the intro, it's totally Wednesday.
Right?
Yeah. Well, nothing big is happening on my end, but are you guys are preparing for PRI, right? The
Yeah, we're
Performance
leaving
Racing
tomorrow
Industry,
morning at like
yeah,
4.
Performance Racing Industry Trade Show. You know, Junk Car Willie's going to be there.
Oh, really? Tell him to come by the
Yeah.
booth and say hi.
Well, he just posted something like on Facebook saying that she was showing that he was driving there. So you'll have to find him and tell him hi.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I didn't get a booth this year because I didn't have any sorcerers to throw in the booth. But yeah, or reason to go to PRI for that fact of the matter. So, but hey, so I had an interesting thought, man.
Sure.
Since you're
What you
going
got?
to PRI, we're really kicking around this 333 class,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got two mandated tire sizes.
Yep.
Why don't you stop by Corky Coker's booth and see if Coker Tire will sponsor that deal?
I was actually going by Hoosier first, but that's a
Oh,
good idea.
well, I would do because see, they're here in Tennessee.
Coker's here in Tennessee?
Yeah, they're in Chattanooga.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll go there.
Yeah, they're about an hour and something from here. So I'm not trying to show any favoritism. They're just already here. Like if you needed something, you could literally drive over there. You
Yeah.
know. So that was just a thought. But since we got Wednesday night kicking off, I'm going to run down the list of all who's who in the zoo and who's here tonight. Michael Robert Embry, One Eyed Cat, Buick Smith, Slant Daily Garage, Fab Race Mod Repeat. Hello from Northeast Dragway. Let's see. Mama M3, Junkyard D, Clint Street Machine says Jello. Like the pudding pops, right? Okay. Danny Boyd, Dizzy Izzy is in the house. Paul Piholi. I hope I said that right. I hope I didn't butcher it too bad. You can figure out what that says. Okay, Clayton's Toolbox. Let's see. 38 Racing is here. Barrow's Garage is here. And Michael Roberts is here. I think that's maybe that might be the whole. Oh, I'm sorry. A few of them just popped in. Nick the Van Man is here, telling everyone, hey. And then Rob's Rods and Streetcars is here. Okay, well, we're kicking it off Wednesday night with the pre-PRI show. I don't really know what's going down. What are your big plans for PRI?
Well, I have stuff I have to do for work, but tomorrow we're going to be getting in there, and I've got a couple meetings to go to, and then I'm going to Don Schumacher Racing, to go check them out. They're going to have an open house for a few different reasons. That'll discuss probably sometime next year. I'll talk about that, and then after that, then Friday, I'm going to be basically walking around, and I've got a list of things I'm going to be checking out. So it's a lot of things I'm going to be doing, and then we're actually driving home Friday night. We're not going to stay for Saturday. We're going to basically get there, get in, and get out.
Well, Thursday to Friday, but like, if you don't have to be there Saturday, oh my gosh, Saturday is like the longest day
It
ever
is.
on that because it's Saturday is also the last day, so everybody breaks down that day, and it's like it starts at I think 6:30 or 7 in the morning when you're setting everything up, and you're literally like drinking coffee while you're putting your booth together, right? And then it's just like that the whole day. And then they kick everybody out, and you're like, I gotta break down, and I gotta put it all in the truck, and I gotta load up, and I gotta drive home. Saturday is like like the worst at PRI.
I,
But
I actually have a few pictures. I want to show you guys something. This is a momentous occasion. I was working on this basically for the last 8 or 9 months, but if you see this right here, Lunati is shipping out crankshafts as of today. So that's first news. So you guys are getting that
congratulations,
first.
you finally hit a milestone, huh?
Yes, very much so, because that's, you know, I'll show you. In fact, he's probably not going to be happy, but this was the very first test run of our engraver, because they're getting it engraved. That's our LS insignia. Those are the 4-inch strokes going out.
Huh.
And here's the very first ones with the brand new reluctors put on that we had just finished. The first I think that was first 10 or so, and then
So you guys have a production line for this?
yes and no. Basically that's been the deal, is that we haven't really shipped them in a while, so getting all that together was. But this
Painful.
guy right here, I call him Iron Mike. Well, I call him Magic Mike, but everyone calls him Iron Mike. This is how happy he is that he's shipping cranks again. That was the very first crank with the very first insignia right there. That was going out. That happened today. So it was a long day. We got a brand new laser machine. So that's our laser machine that we're lasering them up. And that's the very first one.
Congratulations, Shane.
Yeah, that's the very first one. And I'm not going to confirm or deny this, but the very first one might or might not had a shirt that was snuck in there. I don't know.
Well, Michael Robert Embry says Lunati's still making cams.
No,
they're not making them. They have a stockpile of them, and you can buy them uber cheap right now.
Yeah, and
so because the Lunati camshaft line is gone, you got that was it. Comp bought Lunati and Crane, right?
Well, they all merged. So
right,
yeah. So when they all merged, each one's going to have their specialties. So Lunati's going to be cranks and rods, and internal engine as far as cranks and that type of stuff. Comp is going to be everything valve train. Edelbrock's going to be cylinder heads and intake, and they're not going to be doing cams anymore. So basically, there's going to be no competition. They're all going to have their individual type of deals, and which I think is a good idea. That's why if you go on the Lunati's having a fire sale on those camshafts right now.
Well, the Buick one that I saw was $130.
Yeah,
the Buick small block one, and it was like, wow, dude, and I should grab one of those. And then I have no need to. I don't have a Buick 350, but that camshaft for that price, that's pretty freaking cheap.
And they're good cams. Don't think that just because they're on sale,
well, they're just clearancing the inventory, I believe, and they're no longer doing cams, and they're going to do just crankshafts and rods, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So Buick Smith says, can you guys learn me on the differences of the rubber compounds of the drag radials versus slicks? Well, there's a lot more to it than just the rubber compounds.
That's correct. Exactly. Side profile, radials, rollout, rolling resistance. Basically, if you're just talking about rubber compounds, the softer it is, the longer, the least it's going to last, and the harder it's going to grip. And typically, these are like CO7s, I believe, is what we run, right? Isn't it CO7 or DO6?
What? So you're talking about drag slicks or radials?
No, the drag slicks that we run, that you have in your car.
I want to say mine is like a DO6, like the softest one.
Yeah, mine's a CO. Mine's the hard. Mine's the harder compound. I run the harder compound because I can't afford to buy slicks all the time. So I typically like the harder compounds because they'll last a season. Some of these guys in the no prep, the 281050, they have a new compound, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but they literally last one, maybe two events, and then they're no good anymore after that for like the no prep stuff. But they're super dead soft.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference between the drag radials and the slicks is that I've seen is that the drag radial is such a soft compound that they literally only last for a short period of time. Now, here's something that okay, so the compounds themselves, drag radials are generally softer. Okay, they hook better. Well, I can't say they hook better. The softer the compound, the better the hook usually. Okay,
but they have a harder sidewall.
They have a harder sidewall that doesn't flex, and it's like having a stiff sidewall slick is what it is. It's okay. So slicks, where slicks came from, everything, if you go back to the beginning, everything was a bias ply tire, and it literally had fiberglass embedded in the tire. Okay, remember polyglass? So it was fiberglass strands that built the structure of the tire, and then rubber was vulcanized onto the tire shell, right? Okay, that's where tires came from. When Mickey Thompson came up with the drag slick, because Mickey Thompson is the one that invented that, right? The rest of them before that, they had purpose-built slicks, but they technically were just a a bias ply tire that had been recapped by a company called McCreary.
Yep.
McCreary was famous for just recapping the tire. That's why if you go look at the old school drag slicks from like the 50s and early 60s, they got what they call the pie crusts. Okay. And the pie crust was where it was actually vulcanized onto the old Sears road handler tire, if you will. Okay. And then you had your McCreary recap, because really that's how all tires were maintained and repaired, is no one made new tires. They were all recapped way back in the day. Okay. Especially like truck tires, like semi-truck tires. When they went drag racing, they started recapping slicks. They realized that didn't work. Mickey Thompson created the purpose-built drag slick, essentially. Okay. And he took a lot of the sidewall out of them, giving them the opportunity to triangulate the tires. What happens? Okay. So instead of it being round, and then you have a round, small contact patch here, it allows the sidewall to collapse and it spreads the tire out, kind of like a gooey, like a marshmallow.
Imagine a like a tank tread. It just makes it flat,
exactly.
Flattens it out.
Yeah. So you got a huge patch. So that allows them to, and if you go back and look at drag racing, where you really see the effect of the drag racing slick is in Top Fuel. Top Fuel, they were running 200 miles an hour, but it was literally a smoke show side by side all the way down the entire quarter mile. Okay. And that's because the tires sucked. And that was the McCreary recaps. They couldn't handle at the time, 3,000 horsepower. That was a big deal. When they started developing drag slicks just for this, the ETs started dropping big time, and the mile an hour really didn't pick up much, but the ETs dropped big time, right? And then they started working the clutches and then bringing in more fuel and then adding in more mag. And now you are where you are today, but it was all because of the renaissance of the slick. Drag radial is literally a radial tire with a really soft compound on the outside. It doesn't have any flex on the sidewall whatsoever. It's just like a regular radial. The tire doesn't squat and triangulate. It literally just is so soft that it hooks. If you ever go to a track and they got radial prep is even gooier than the stuff you normally run on a regular bracket track.
That's the fastest this car's ever ran on leaf springs, was on a radial prep track, because I could actually dump the power to it, and the tire hooked. No matter how bad the suspension was, the tire was able to hook.
So that's the big difference between the two. The evolution of the radial, in my opinion, was kind of like, I don't know, it's like lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig with lipstick on it.
The one thing I like about the radials, though, is that you're going to mile an hour better.
Well, the radial, and that's because of the tire, the structure of the tire, right?
Yeah, less rolling resistance, yeah.
The radial allowed for the 28-10-5 that's happening today. That's what created the drivetrain combination that allowed you to take all the torque out and apply massive amounts of power. And then the torque comes up because the power level is ramping up as it's going down the track. That radial is what drove that. Okay. Yeah. The next thing that's going to happen is probably, I'm thinking that what we're seeing is things are going to go backwards a little bit, quite a bit, because the money's no longer there. The money's no longer there nobody can be street outlaws again today. There's nothing new that they could show up with, and then once that fad is, because it's already fading, once that fad goes away, it may go back to something a little bit more reasonable. But even the Southeast gassers, they don't push the clutches anymore.
It's ridiculous.
Everything is kind of going the way of the dodo. And that's what the whole AHRA thing was about. Okay, so I'm going to answer this question that Clayton's Toolbox has here.
Sure.
Says, ever consider setting up something so the AHRA members get a discount at certain performance suppliers?
Huh, funny.
Man, that's a freaking awesome idea.
Didn't we do that in like 16?
Yeah, I did that from the get-go. But with lots of members, it could be possible and a win-win for everyone. Yes. And right before I put it on a hiatus, right before my wife left and decided to blow up everything, I had hooked up a deal with Competition Products, and you actually had a jobber price as an AHRA member, and all you had to do is maintain your membership, and you literally had a jobber price at Competition Products, which was
And
Howard's cam stuff.
I did that also too when I was at Crower. If you had
You
an
did. Yep.
AHRA member, you got everything at like a Jobber. So
Yeah.
that was like better than most people could even buy it.
And that was Crower in the heyday before today.
Yes.
Right. Like when it was
yes.
good parts,
Yes.
really good stuff. And I don't think there may have been 2 people that took advantage of it the whole entire time.
Yeah, 2. I think I got 2 calls. That was it. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Let's see. Nick the Van Man says he bought his Lunati hydraulic roller on closeout for literally like $275. Super mild grind, 206, 216 at 50, 477, 477, 112 LSA. I bet it'll make a bunch of torque.
Yes. Have high vacuum too. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Nick the Van Man says, tech question. I bought a set of Lunati roller retrofit lifters online. They came in a black plastic tray with a clear top, Lunati instruction sheet. No name on the link bar. Is that normal?
100%. Yeah. Very rarely did they get lasered on the link bar with the Lunati name. But yes, that is 100% normal.
Let's see. All right. And you know what? Those most likely, it sounds like the same black tray with a clear plastic top that I got when I bought Morel lifters. Sounds like that's what those were, just repackaged Morels. I don't know, but that black plastic tray with the clear cover on it is exactly what I got when I got Morels. So, and they were noisy. I had to run 1030 oil, or they clattered really bad. And I think that's because the hole was designed to have like 1030 oil.
Yeah, and that's the one thing is that it's because of how the lifter is. They have with all these quicker ramp rates, you got to have a thinner oil because people don't want them to bleed down, but yet they want faster ramp rates. And those both are double negatives. It's either you got to pick one or the other. The only way to fix that is to have much smaller holes. The only way to fix that is to put thinner oil. So so that way you're not leaking down. So it's one of those things. It's one or the other.
Oh, well, and I really enjoyed those lifters. They didn't go bad. I had a set before that I got from Schneider, and the roller wheel stopped turning, and it ate the camshaft. Like it turned it into a lathe, and not cool. All right, so 38 Racing said, Lunati big block Chevy roller cam on sale. Go check it out, man. They had a bunch of cams they were clearancing.
Yeah.
So if you find something interesting, throw it up here in the chat, and we'll pull it up and see what it says. Unity Motorsports Garage, Andy says radio for the win, unless on a sketchy track.
I agree.
Yeah, that's why I liked drag slicks, because they could turn even the most sketchiest track into something that was almost manageable. Let's see.
Yeah. Now with my new suspension, I'll be able to hook on a dirt road.
Well, hooking on a dirt road is a big plus. You'll be up there with the Fox bodies. Reese Holder says, I'll be AHRA till I die. I'm the one that wrote you on Facebook the other day. I support Dallas. And hey, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm starting to get some interest again, I guess, because I did give, what's his name, Robert McDonald, 1 year worth of rights to make AHRA merchandise. And so he's going to be selling Merchants of Speed AHRA merch. So he's going to make his own stuff. I let him do that just because I'm not doing really anything with it at the moment. Mom N3 says, I used the AHRA discount plenty of times. And you know what? And there was quite a few of you that probably did use it at Competition Products. I'm talking about when Shane was at Crower. When he was the cam doctor at Crower, we had a deal from the day I started doing business at the AHRA, where literally you could call and you got jobber price on a camshaft from Crower. Well, actually, anything that
everything.
Yeah.
But and then if you spent over like say $3,500, so that like if you bought a crank, rods, camshaft, lifters, it was over $3,500, man. We were giving you some people were saving almost $1,000.
See, and that's a freaking steal of a deal.
Yeah.
When you're talking good quality parts. I mean, let's face it, you can go buy some scat rods, but they're not going to compare anything to a set of Crowers. Like that's what I liked about, and I'll explain to you that, and I'm a big, staunch, hardcore, good American-made parts guy. But what I really am is I'm the guy. I'm cheap. Okay, I like to build stuff on the cheap. People know that already. They know that about me. But I like, if I'm going to buy something, I like buying it once, and I can use that same set, 5, 6, 7 different motors, right? And because I'm one of those people that's always changing my configuration up, trying to gain the next 1 horsepower, or lose a bunch of money. That's normally what I do. So,
and that's where I'm getting that. That's the reason why I'm so proud to be working for Lunati now, is that I'm bringing that quality, because Crowder's not doing rods anymore. I don't know if you know that or not. They're not making rods anymore. So the whole idea is to capture that market in the Lunati and then bring everything that I've learned at Crowder and bring it over to Lunati. So that way we can make that style of rod. We'll have our entry level for the most people, I'd say like up to 1,000 horsepower and under. And then everybody above that, we're going to have a different style of rod. We're going to be moving to that X-beam rod. And, I've been playing with that quite a bit, and I've changed some of the design, and I'm very comfortable with it compared to, like, say, a typical I-beam that I would make for that kind of power. And we're going to be moving to that direction, and I'll be proud to be putting them in my car, and that's saying something. If I can put it in my car and I'll trust it, then that's definitely saying something. I've always said, if I wouldn't put it in my car, I'm not gonna make it.
So Reese Holder says, I bought so many stickers and T-shirts from eBay, hoping I'm doing my tiny part to help keep it alive. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And you were. It was, every little bit helped. I mean, I never took anything from the AHRA. I've always put it back into the association. So when I bought T-shirts, I just used like more T-shirts. I used that money that you had spent to buy a T-shirt. And I kept rolling it over and rolling it over and rolling it back in. I had a pretty tough time going at it, especially from 2020 on. So I had 2020 had COVID lockdown. You might as well just blow that year out. And then 2021, when we started racing again, it was $5 a gallon gas, and it stayed that way for like a little while. And I mean, that's all overhead. And I mean, gosh, you want to hit me right where it hurts the most. I mean, I cut it to where the only overhead I had was fuel, really. And still it hurt you so bad. But
you were doing that when it was just atrocious. So it's $4 or $5 a gallon, it seemed like.
Yeah, it was $5 a gallon.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to bring my family along too. But let's see. Mama M3 says she was hoping for a license plate. I used to have those. Took me 2-3 years to sell the 5 I had made. So I just stopped selling them. They just weren't a big seller. And that's one thing you have to learn, is that, like, when you spend a bunch of money on stuff like that, you have to spend. When you start off small, when you're starting a business is probably the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And I wouldn't say it was successful. You have to do the small production runs, because you can't afford to double down on something that doesn't sell, right? That you'll never get your money out of. So you do the small production runs to test it and lose $100 or $200, instead of losing $2,000. So you do the small production runs, and then you get beat up on the price. So that was the biggest. The license plates was a big one for me. I had license plate frames as well. Those were a big one for me. They were costing me almost $30 to make a license plate frame. I couldn't sell it for $30. So I just stopped making them. The license plates themselves were almost the same kind of thing, but really, we met that dude at PRI. Let's see, me and you and John and like a whole group of us went over there for John's Friday Night Live during PRI, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. And that dude, what was his name? Travis Bell? I think that's what it was.
That was cool, man.
Yeah. He made license plates for a living. So I probably could have cut some of the cost, the overhead out of that, if I had made my own AHRA license plate and have it made at Travis Bell's place. But it would be hard. That's a tough road to hoe, right? Especially now that I'm not out on the road doing anything. I mean, I might sell 1 T-shirt a month over on eBay. So it's not really worth it to me. And
Yeah.
please, that doesn't mean run over there and buy a bunch of t-shirts. It's kind of complicated for me to even package them up and send them out at the moment. So I don't really care. Let's see. All right. But yeah, we'll get back to business as usual sooner or later. I just need to know what I have. And that's the problem right now is I'm going through the world's longest divorce and I don't know what I have. You know, I'd hate to double down on the AHRA and then have no place to live. So, okay. Nick the Van Man says, tech question, the cam I listed, those lifters I spoke of in my fresh pro built 351 Windsor with GT40s and trick flow. Valve spring kit. What's my max safe RPM shift point?
I wouldn't know because I don't know that spring, but what's your spring pressure on the seat and over the nose? Typically, you're going to want somewhere. Now, that's a pretty small camshaft that you were talking about. So
here's the cam.
Yeah. So you're not going to be much over 5,000 RPM anyways. Yeah, with that. So I would say that you would probably be safe to there as long as you have at least 100 to 120 on the seat and at least 275 to 300 over the nose. You should be just fine. As long as you're close to that, you'll be fine to 5,000 easily.
Let's see. Buick Smith says, Shane, does Lunati make a flat plane crank for the Chevy 194 to 250, 292 inline six?
Negative.
How dare you guys not make a flat plane crank for that?
Negative.
Okay. Yeah. And then Clint Street Machines is saying it was Travis Bell. Oh, John saying he does quantities of 300.
Yeah. You know, the only flat plane crank that I ever made was for an LS with titanium rods. And that was the only way that I would do a flat plane crank because they're so light. The whole idea of them is being super light. What firing order are you going to do? And then from that point, you have to run a titanium rod because you got to get all the bob weights down and you don't want to put any Mallory in them. So that was the only way I would do it. They would have to buy the titanium rod with a flat plane crank. And I need to ask Lewis if he ever got that thing running because he did all that stuff, and that was like 2019, and then the whole world shut down. So I'm curious if that thing ever ran.
Let's see. John Wilburn says, so to sell 5 license plates in 5 years, that's a 23, 25 break even. It would take me a little bit over, I don't know, 300 years to break even on that. And so that's why you don't go out and bet the farm on a set of license plates. You just had to do a small production run to see how they go.
Yeah.
I did that on shirts. I like t-shirts. I would make one design and I would literally make 1,000 of them. And then if nobody liked them, too bad. That's the only shirts I had. If you wanted a shirt, that's the one you bought. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I'd get my money back out of them. And then I'd go buy another 1,000 shirts. And then that way, because see, when you do a big order like 1,000 shirts, you can get the shirt price down to like, say, $9, $8, something like that, something very manageable to where you do make your money back off of them. And you do make it back off of them like within a year and a half, 2 years. The idea was that I could sell them faster. If I could sell them faster, I could turn it around every year and make a whole new t-shirt and then get into the business of making an annual t-shirt. Way back in the day, NHRA, when you renewed, they would send you a t-shirt and it had the year on it. I'm like, man, I got a 2003 shirt, and that showed what kind of staunch member you were. But I thought about doing the same thing because they don't do that in NHRA anymore. Like all the stuff is so trivial and lame, hat pin. Dude, like how many people wear a hat these days?
Dude, you should check out, Tony's Hot Rod Garage, man. He'll do all that stuff.
I'm sure he will. I just haven't got my shit together to get the AHRA back out there again.
I need to bother him about my Cookie Monster, t-shirt for the car.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have some Cookie Monsters up there soon, so I got to talk to him about that.
Let's see. John says Gunslinger Graphics for the win. Yeah, and that's why he does. That's why he's got pretty much our whole community worth of merch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bear Rose Garage says I used to find my little red shift point. I'm sorry, my God, what's wrong with my brain today? My red line shift point by holding it in second gear, watching the tag. When it nosed over, that's where I set it. Don't go fast enough to get a ticket, but made a lot of noise.
That's awesome.
Okay, so Buick Smith says, I've been watching a lot of vids from Argentina. A lot of the 250 sound like a flat plane crank. Not sure where they're getting them.
I don't think they're flat planes, honestly. If they're the 250s, that's probably just a big camshaft. Because I was sending them when I was at Crowder, I used to send them quite a bit of very large camshafts to them because they're really hardcore into those things, and they buzz those things to 9-10 grand. So I think what you're hearing is lots of compression and lots of camshaft.
Well, no, I'm starting to think about this, and I'm thinking, isn't the 6-cylinder almost like a flat plane crank anyway?
Well, they're 120. It's going to be 120 degrees.
It's going to be the closest you can get for a flat without being a flat plane crank.
Because it's going to fire every
120 degrees.
Yeah, every 20, and then it's going to go front 3, back 3, front 3, back 3, front 3, back 3. So when it comes out the exhaust, it's going to sound like it's on every side.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah. No, it's the header. Yeah. Okay. So if you get headers, like Andrew Nelson made a set of, or no, it was Calvin Nelson, wasn't it? Made a set of 180 degree headers. And that's what you're hearing on that 6-cylinder, because they are like, when they go to a header, they're literally like 180 degree header. Is really what it is.
And especially if they're running like, say, 3 to 1 and then 2 to 1, man, they really, and with lots of compression and camshaft, that's what you're hearing.
All right. Well, other than that, I've just been working on the neighbor's 08 Impala appliance car that ran over a deer. And so, hit like a 6-point buck. Believe that. So, guess what? They still weigh like 1,000-something pounds. So, crunched the whole front, and I've just been replacing it. So I did something cool. I should have probably made a YouTube video of it, because most people these days, they just like throw the car away. And she was like kind of upset, like, oh, I just put 4 new tires on it. And I'm like, hey, watch this, right? Hold my beer and watch this. I'll go find you a parts car. So I found a parts car for like $500. It was the same color. We didn't have to repaint anything. So like, that's the best deal going, man. But you got to be in that special era, of like cars that are like 10 to 15 years old. And that's where it really rings out cheap.
Ron's got a great question there that I would love to answer, because this is a great question.
Well, ring compressors can damage pistons.
Yes, they can. And here's the thing: if you get one of those, have you ever seen those steel, those spring steel ones with the it's got the twist on it?
Yep.
They will break your spring 100%.
Well, your ring, they'll break the rings.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They'll break.
They will also score the side of the piston, the skirts.
Yeah, because there's an overlap on it. That's the problem with it. It's got one metal ring that's an overlap. So you're gonna have a line there, and no matter what you do, you'll always get it. Now, you do have some that are like you have some that are like a pair of pliers that clamp. I have those, and then I also have ones for like that are an aluminum ones for it's made for a specific bore, or it's a specific bore that has got a big hose clamp on it that you can kind of open and close.
That's the one that I got now. Okay, see, I was stuck with this because just like you in the slant world, nobody made anything good for like the obscure bores.
Exactly.
Right? And so you were stuck with the stupid steel sleeve. And I mean, I'm a freaking pro at the stupid steel sleeve. I'm good at them.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I've broken many a ring, and I have scored many a piston with that stupid sleeve, because there is an overlap period. What you want on that thing, ideally, you want the overlap to occur near the wrist pin. Okay.
On the side.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if you ever try to drive a piston, you literally need to drive a piston in with one of those things, compared to the sleeves. When someone started, the best thing that ever happened to my small block Buick was the freaking 5.3 LS turbo turd, junkyard shit box, because it had the same bore as my 350 Buick. So all like everything that came out for the 5.3 pretty much fit the 350, especially those the pre drilled and honed sleeves. Dude, I tell you what, you get a small bore motor and you're putting it together with one of those sleeves that's like the tapered sleeve, not the steel sleeve, the crank it down, but like the one with the hose clamp on it that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you can literally push that freaking piston in with your thumb.
Exactly.
So, all right. And then Rod Ward says, "Oh, and hi guys." So he came in here to stir it up and then just freaking dash out the door.
Well, no, I love that question because that's the truth. That's one of those things that you learn that you just forget about. So I got rid of all those steel sleeve ones, but I
still have a steel
everything
sleeve.
else.
I still
What's
have the
that?
steel sleeve. Yeah, I have one of those steel sleeves, and I have probably, I don't know, 20 different bores. And I always tell myself, man, I can't justify buying it for just one, right? Just one. And then I like stumble through a build with one, and then I'm like, another one will come up, and it's like, dang it, all right, I'll order one now, and then I'll use it one time, and I'll put it in. But I got like 27 sleeves that are just sized for like one thing.
Have you seen the one that's like it's like a metal clamp? It doesn't have a ridge on it, but it's got like a pair of pliers, that a ratcheting set of pliers.
Yep.
I've
And
got
it's got
that
a steel
one.
sleeve like about an inch long.
Yeah, it's about 3 inches long, but yeah, it
Oh,
doesn't
3 inches.
overlap. And then it's got little pins on it, and it says top bottom on it, so that way it knows which way to go. And
Those are
you
the
can,
professional ones.
dude, I have those, and I also
Those are
have
good.
the aluminum one for specific bore, and then I also have the aluminum one that's got the hose clamp on it that will go up and down to about an eighth of an inch. But you get one of those, you can just go with your finger, and it goes right in.
Well, Michael Schmidt says tech wonderment. In an engine, 2 cylinders hit top dead center at the same time. Is there any benefit to firing 2 cylinders at one time with a proper camshaft? Would the power torque be the same in, say, 6? Or I don't get it. In, say,
He's saying
8?
like a straight, yes, like a straight 8, a straight 6. So
Or slant 6. Okay.
yeah, no, because the whole idea is that a perfect cycle is actually 3. Because if you have engine like on a Carnell cycle, so you're going to have a power and an overlap. So on a three cylinder engine, technically, you're not having a power overlap on each one of them. So on a 6 cylinder, you're technically having power overlap because you're having 2 3 cylinder engines essentially. So you've already got overlap. But if you're having 2 pistons fire, then you're going to have a lot of delay where there is no power. So the whole idea of is having the power strokes, basically I want to say opposite of each other, but as opposite as possible, so that way you're not twisting the crank. But at the same time, there's always a power stroke happening, so that way you have linear power as much as you can, and you're not having big power, lots of draw, big power, lots of draw, big power, lots of draw, because then you're gonna have a lot of parasitic loss. Even though it's still the same power, you're gonna have a lot of deformation of the crankshaft at that point. Now, on an 8 cylinder, that's essentially what a flat plane crank is. When it's on a V, this one's going to fire before it goes around to this one. So you're always going to have one firing boom, 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 boom on either side. On a cross plane crank, you're always going to have somewhere where there's going to be 2 on either side firing close to each other, or actually right after one after the other. I think it's 5-7 on one. I think it's 4-6 on an LS firing more than a 4-7. There's always 2 firing next to each other. On a flat plane, there's always it's opposite sides, and there's I think like 7 different firing orders for that, or 6 different firing orders for that flat plane.
So Ron Ward beat me to my answer, but
Sure.
he says, "LOL." Shane just explained the Harley Davidson engine. That's how Harley just did it.
Yes.
But he had 2 rods on the same journal, essentially, right?
Yeah, but
so when it would come up and fire, it'd go fire.
Exactly.
And then you'd have like 300 degrees of rotation. Well, actually, it's more than that because it's 2 cycles, so it's like almost 600 degrees of rotation before it happens again, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like did it, and that's why the Harley has its like signature sound, right?
Potato. But that's what makes them so inefficient. That's why they leak oil. That's why they shake. That's why everything that you don't want, that's what a Harley does.
Right, and that's because of the characteristic signature of 2 cylinders firing one right after the other. And if you really look at it, the way it's set up is like the reason for it was so that you could have a big, humongous one cylinder, or you could have two cylinders that fired and they're both split in half, right? And you have two cylinders that fire, and it would create the same as one big piston. That was the idea. But I mean, nobody wants a thumper that big. I mean, when you're talking 1400 cc thumper, that's like 700 cc per cylinder. So
and
it's pretty
38
healthy.
Racing actually beat me to this too, is that Detroit diesels, because they were two strokes a lot of the time, they've had to fire at the same time on some of those, because there was a lot that, when you're having a two stroke, you're only having basically it's up and down. So there's only two strokes on them. So there was a time where, if you have like say a V12 or V24, they're going to be firing at the same time. There's going to be a few cylinders doing
that. Two-stroke diesels. I can.
Yeah, the Detroit diesel was that's where the supercharger comes from.
Yeah, well, they, before. Oh yeah, and before that, they used to have one called the FM8. It was the Fairbanks Morse 8-cylinder, and it was two crankshafts, 4 cylinders opposed.
Yeah,
and they fired towards each other. Each piston compressed. They were the combustion chamber essentially.
Yes, yeah, and that's actually the best way to do it, because then you don't have to ever worry about blowing a head gasket or anything, and then you just have a spark, basically a detonator in one, and then you have a exhaust.
With the diesel, you didn't have to do.
I'm sorry, injector in the center. Yeah, and then so you have the thing at the bottom. But the Detroits, they would have a positive displacement for those. So that way you have still positive displacement to get the charge in there, to get it to fire. And then the valves were basically at the top. They're the exhaust valves only.
Yeah, and it's like a reed setup. Mostly old parts. Ron Ward says Harley Davidson, the quickest way to turn gasoline into noise without the side effect of acceleration.
Exactly.
So yes, the Navy PBRs, they have the most distinct badass sound.
Yeah,
they do have that twin 6V53.
Yep.
Everybody's into this. They like the hot rod old school 2-stroke diesels. They sound good. They just didn't make any power, not compared to today's stuff. But I learned a lot of it. That was my job in the Navy, was the ship stuff. The ship stuff, like engineering.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a few guys there on YouTube. It was maybe even older videos. I'm not really sure what platform it was on, but he took a couple Detroits, and he still has a supercharger on them, but then he had turbos coming off the exhaust, putting pressure into the blower. Yeah. And that's when those things really make some power.
Yeah, we had let's see. Oh, the Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates. That would generate our electricity. We had, I can't remember what it was now. It was a 16-cylinder, but it was a V16, but it had 2 superchargers and 4 turbos per each engine. And it was all the turbos fed the superchargers, because Gil Banks is right. You can't overboost a diesel. It runs on pretty much pre-detonation.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's technically dieseling.
Yes.
That's why I'm really into like locomotives and trains. I like steam trains, and I also like some of the diesels, the early EMDs, 16-cylinder. Those things are 2-stroke diesels, and they're just
the high pressure steam stuff. All right, so high pressure steam stuff is so crazy. Do you
it's the hand of God?
People don't understand the amount of power that thing is capable of. In the Navy, when you were looking for a leak in high pressure steam, you used a broomstick, because if you waved your hand in the air, the high pressure steam was so strong it would literally cut your fingers and hands off.
Yeah.
Right. So you used a broomstick because it would cut the broomstick off. But that's
and it's the closest thing to an electric motor, because it's literally instant torque. It's just.
Let's see. All right. Mostly old parts. Ron Ward says, Shane, do aluminum heads with bronze guides require a different valve stem clearance than stock iron heads?
A different valve
stem. I do know you can run them tighter.
Yeah. But
because they don't wear as bad.
Do aluminum heads with bronze guides require a different stem? Clearance then. Is he talking about where the actual stem goes through the guide? Is that what he's talking about?
Yeah, the clearance on the guide to the valve stem.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, you can always run them tighter, but as far as for the valve stem clearance,
well, he's saying aluminum heads with bronze guides. Do they require different valve stem clearances than stock iron heads?
well, I
They
guess what I'm
would,
asking,
because the aluminum head is going to expand more, right?
yeah,
So
but
you do run them tighter.
yeah, so that's what I'm getting at is that maybe you have a stem, bronze guide, head. Is he talking about between the aluminum and the bronze guide, or the bronze guide and the stem?
The bronze and the stem. The bronze and the stem is not too bad because the bronze doesn't expand like
I was
the
going to say,
aluminum does.
because between those two, there's really no difference because it's a round object. Now you do put them tighter in the bronze to the aluminum because the aluminum's going to heat up and it's going to expand more. But
Right.
between the stem and the bronze guide, since it's a circular object, it doesn't matter how much force you put on it, it's going to put even pressure all the way around it. So it's not going to make any difference. But the aluminum head is going to absorb heat more. So then it's going to put more heat into the bronze guide quicker. So typically you would run those just a slight bit looser at that point if it's a race car.
38 Racing saying it might have been Detroit Diesels, I guess. There were Detroit diesel engines that were turbo and blowers 92 series. That's probably what it was on that. I don't remember because I did not study our engineering plan. Well, I learned it good enough for my ESWAS and move on, but it's like they didn't let me down there to work on that stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Buick Smith is asking, do any of you guys remember the Super Boss and Baghdad Bandit race semi trucks? No.
I used to watch that. Like when would they have it? Mad TV or whatever it was. They used to have this on Channel 45 where they would have like the Edge race. It was called the Edge, and they would have like all the semi truck racing and then the Formula boats. You remember that where they would have all the really.
I loved it when well, so Diamond P in the 80s was the
Diamond P. Yep.
Yeah, they were the boss. They were on TNN, right, with the Nashville network, and they were really good. They had all the obscure racing stuff. But what was cool is every year they'd always cover like Pikes Peak, right? They'd always do the swamp buggy racing. Like I've never seen swamp buggy televised since then. You remember the boats that used to turn on a dime and they would make those freaking.
Those are Formula boats. Those are
what it is? Those things are freaking awesome.
Yes.
And then they had like what was funny about it is they would never go over 30 knots maybe. But it's like they're in your backyard through this freaking canal that's cut through there and turning at 180-degree angles.
If I had a plot of land, I would literally make one of those. It's a very confined area, and you would have the best racing, the most exciting racing in a confined area. It would just be insane, awesome.
So Buick Smith is saying that a 142 cubic inch steam engine is equivalent to 720 cubic inch gas engine. So why didn't we do steam? I know Stanley steamer in the car.
Well,
it's gotta be.
It's inefficient because your troposphere, you're going to have X amount of power, because you got to heat, you got to boil, and you got to do that. But as far as if you're using it on waste, like if it's a waste oil, then it becomes efficient. But when you're using it for stuff that's like burning wood and stuff, it just takes too long. It's just too inefficient at that point.
Yeah, that's where it'd be better to have like propane or natural gas on board and then let her eat.
Well, also to the amount of maintenance that's required for steam comparatively.
Dude, I'm talking like, all right, you want to know like some really cool history? Go look at World War II, like Navy ships getting sunk during World War II, right? And you would see the ship like on fire and like they're putting the fire out, and then all of a sudden you see one explosion, and that's probably generally like a torpedo or a mine that they hit. And then you'd see a secondary explosion that was just like humongous. That's the steam boiler blowing up.
That's the boiler going out. Yep. Yeah. Getting too cold too fast.
Yeah. Let's see. And then Ron Ward was saying yes, where the stem goes through the guide. Okay.
Yeah.
Dougster is saying that the blower in a Detroit diesel is just used to make the engine exhale. She can't run without it.
Yes,
No
exactly.
boost. The turbo feeds into the ceiling of the blower to boost.
To boost. Yes, exactly. So basically, all the blower's doing in a Detroit is literally positive pressure on the intake side because the intakes are at the bottom and the exhaust valves are at the very top.
Huh. Bear Rose is saying that he's always said that steam is a viable alternative to EV when it comes to alternative power generation.
Well, look, here's something I've always worked on, and I don't give a shit. I'll never figure it out, or I shouldn't say figure it out. I figured it out, but I just never had time to do it. Instead of EV, here's one thing. What's the one byproduct of a gasoline engine is heat, right? And it's exhaust. What are we not using? The exhaust heat, right? So if we use the exhaust heat instead of running a catalytic converter, you run it through a small boiler, right? The boiler builds pressure. When you're in traffic, you use the steam of the electric. I shouldn't say electric. You use the steam engine to get it off the line because literally it's instant torque, and then your gas engine takes over. So as your engine's running, it's making this pressure, it's making this boiler, it's a very small boiler, and you don't need much to get a car accelerated in first gear. You get that going, and it would be literally free because it's just water and byproduct of the engine already. That's what I've always wanted to do.
Well, let's see here. My mouse is going dead again. Okay, so let's see. Michael Schmidt says solid lifter valve clearance. What drives the amount of lash? For example, I'm assuming that "I'd" is a typo. If you regrind a cam, how do you know new lash?
The ramp rate. So when you regrind the cam, that is going to be whatever the profile of the camshaft. So like right now, they're getting so specific on these cams that you can literally have an intake ramp rate and an exhaust ramp rate. Typically, the exhaust ramp rate is going to be much slower because you're opening the valve against cylinder pressure, which is, i.e., against combustion, right? So you're going to make it slower. So you're going to have blowdown, then it's going to ramp in. Typically on an intake valve, you're going to do the exact opposite. You're going to want to open as fast as possible and close as fast as possible. Or the exhaust, you want to do it open slowly, and then you close it fast. So that is going to be on the profile of the camshaft 100%. And the people who regrind it should tell you where it's going to be. Typically, it's going to be somewhere between 15 to 22 if it's a solid profile. If it's a hydraulic profile that they're using, it's going to be a tighter lash, or some of these call it zero lash. I would start at 5 to 8 on one of those, but the people who regrind it will tell you exactly what it's supposed to be done.
All right. So then we got some people that are hailing us for mentioning Diamond P on here. So you get Ron Ward says the Australian sprint boats.
Yes.
And then swamp buggies.
The sippy hole.
The sippy hole. Yeah.
The sippy hole, man. You know which ones I loved? Was not the swamp buggies. I loved the Jeeps with the 2 scoops on them, because there would be like 12 of those things bobbing through. And they would have literally be underwater. It'd be 2 dudes, and like he'd be sitting up. The water's up to his neck, and they're going through the sippy hole in these Jeeps. Oh, I love that.
I just like the announcers. So it was like Dave McClellan and was Steve Evans? I think so. And they were great, man. I mean, they were drag racing announcers, but they could make the sippy hole sound amazing, right?
Yeah.
So John Wilburn says the American Sports Cavalcade on TNN. That's exactly where it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on TNN. That's what it's channel 45 for me.
The original power block.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bear Rose Garage says you nailed it. Mostly old parts. Somewhere I have old VHS tapes of those races we recorded off of cable TV back in the day. That's what you should put up on YouTube.
Exactly.
So that's not lost.
And you know what I did too is I used to remember when you used to record your VHS, so you would do it like 5 minutes before and then after. I used to record all those things too. Yeah.
Let's see.
TNN on Sundays was the best. I agree.
Yeah. Buick Smith says Super Boss was like Big Red, but for trucks. He did drag, road, hill, and lane speed. I saw it live in Fargo, North Dakota when I was 11. They used shovels and ice scrapers to peel the rubber off the road from burnout.
That's awesome.
All right. John Wilburn's schooling everyone here. Ron, that TNN programming was canned in '95 when it became the corporate show that it still is. Yes, I agree. When they sold out is when all the good stuff went away.
Yeah.
It's when TNN literally had to make its own shows, and it had motorsports and power block, hot rod shows in the morning cornered. When you had shows like, well, that's where Stacey David started, was trucks. He used to be on every Sunday morning, and like I had a paper route that had early in the morning. I had to deliver papers, and I would come home by 7 o'clock. I'd make myself some pancakes on Sunday, and I'd sit down and watch Power Block. That was my routine.
See, for me, it was about lunchtime because I was on the West Coast, right? So for me, when it came on, it was later, and because they played it, must have be a different time. But for me, the wife was like, oh, car TV's on every Sunday, so like it was 4 hours of nothing but car TV. It was awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox says, anyone ever used propane in a drag race car? Could be a great fuel source. Yes, people have tried it.
Yeah,
and it does work good.
I've never done it on a drag car. People used to use it in California to get up and over the grade. So it was a very good power fuel alternative. Instead of paying for $5 or $6 for diesel, they could run propane for like $1 something a gallon.
Let's see. Nick the Van Man says, am I the only guy who likes quiet turbo mufflers so I can hear the headers tick and the valve train? No, I like that too.
Yep.
And you know that. I'm the old guy now. Mostly old parts. Ron Ward says that John Wilburn, or at John Wilburn, Diamond P set the bar for the performance automotive video market. I believe they created it.
Yes.
To be honest with you,
I agree with that.
There has been no one since who has done it better. Well, maybe we should do that, Ron. Come to Nashville. We'll go find out where the sippy holes are at, and we'll do some freaking announcing. So, Danny Boyd says, I'm old, so I appreciate quiet mufflers all around. I agree. Let's see. Buick Smith says, Shane, we did that very thing on a stationary engine in shop class in 1988. It worked to start a 40-foot grain auger.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Yeah. I've always wanted to do that on a street car, like a little mini truck or something that you drove around. Not a big engine, just a small engine. Even a 2-cylinder would do it. So like if you had like a Volkswagen Bug, that was what I envisioned. You had a small 2-cylinder engine, and then basically a steam engine that was on the that was just literally a ratchet at that point. So one fired up, once that thing got the pressure, small boiler, doesn't take much, and then each time it would stop, it would start up, it would get enough pressure, it would accelerate, and then you would use the steam off, and then the gas engine would take it away, because the gas engine's inefficient until it's running down the road. Accelerating is the worst part
because you use it so much.
Yeah,
that's why the diesel kicks its butt, because the gasoline has so much less energy in gasoline than it is diesel.
Yep.
Danny Boyd says Crank and Chrome and Two Guys Garage.
Yes.
I don't know if those were those Diamond P things, or were those things on TNN? Because after 1995, I joined the Navy. I didn't have TV for freaking ever, right? When I came back to the States, let's see. When I came back to the States in 2000, they had this channel. What was it called? Speed Vision. And I had got cable just for Speed Vision. And I think I had Speed Vision for like 2 years, maybe 3 years, but I got deployed there twice. And when I came home from my Guantanamo Bay making an Al Qaeda prison, they no longer had Speed Vision. It was Speed.
Yeah, Speed Vision was channel 56, and then it went to Speed.
Yeah. Let's see here.
And then you had like ESPN and ESPN2, and ESPN2, it like took over some of those hardcore racing stuff. So ESPN2 was like, became like the old Diamond P.
Well, and see, and it's funny because Ron's saying that right here. Had it not been for TNN, there would never have been Thursday Night Thunder on ESPN. Flat track racing at Ascot was freaking amazing.
Exactly, that's what I loved. And they would have these flat track bikes, and they would have 4 colors. So me and my buddies, we would sit around, we would be drinking beer and doing whatever, and then they would have like, there would be a yellow, a helmet, an orange helmet, a red, and a blue. And then we would who's going to bet on what. So it was like 3 or 4 laps. So like you'd bet like $1 on who was going to win, and it was like they would go around and it was team racing. Oh, that was so awesome. I missed that stuff.
Wait, do you remember for a few years their speed was really awesome, right? Where they
Yeah,
did the World Rally Championship stuff, but they also had like they went over to England and they had freaking sidecar racing. You remember the sidecar
it
racing on the
was
motorcycles?
amazing. Yes, I loved all the racing, and now I watch all that now stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I don't even watch it on YouTube. I need to make a list and then just start watching that stuff on YouTube because there was so many awesome motorsports that just didn't get covered.
You've been here in my garage now. I've got that big screen up on the wall here, right
Yeah.
behind you, and I've got the surround sound in here. So I watch all the Australian supercars. Man, I love that, dude. That is just amazing. And then
The
they have
V8
the older
supercars were
cars.
awesome. Yeah.
Huh?
The V8 supercars were an awesome series.
Oh yeah,
I've watched them. Like I went to Bathurst in 2009.
yeah.
I
You were
watched
saying
the
that.
Bathurst 1000. Yeah. But dude, I have a bunch of videos from that. Like I should probably just recreate them and post them up on YouTube. Uh, just real hot rodding stuff. All right. Danny Boyd says Fox ruins everything they touch, and Speed Vision was no exception.
Yeah,
Well, they made a terrible, like, I don't know, fake news channel. I mean, I hate to beat up on them, but they are just as pathetically fake as CNN and all the other ones. That
yeah.
Fox channel is. But and then I was told that Fox channel is not even supposed to be news; it's supposed to be entertainment. And it's like, who could make a channel off of fake life, right? I mean, just altering life just enough to make fake news out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Clayton's Toolbox says, considering running lower valve spring pressure on the exhaust side and more on the intake, how much lower can it be on the exhaust? No room
Okay.
for specifics, but just wondering in general.
That's one of those things that you never want to do, and I'll explain it. On the exhaust is the only time that you're reliant on the spring so the valve doesn't contact the piston, because the piston is chasing the valve closed. So it is 100% dependent on the spring pressure to make sure that valve is closed so the valve and the piston do not occupy the same space at the same time. So even though it sounds like a great idea, just don't do it. On the exhaust, always keep the spring pressure a little higher. I know, especially on an NA engine. I set up all mine like that. It doesn't, you're probably gonna hurt some valve train, but it's better than having a valve hit a piston. But when that valve, when that piston is chasing that valve down, you definitely want that. Now on the intake side, it's a little heavier. Now you can weigh the valves, and then that's going to make your difference as far as spring pressures, but just don't lower it because it's the exhaust side, and you're trying to gain some by blowdown. Now you can, and that does help on a lot of like stock and super stock engines or different applications, but if you're can't afford those type of expenses, if those two things touch, I wouldn't do it. I would actually typically raise it on a lot of my NA engines. I do that just so I don't have that issue.
So I'm gonna run through this real quick. Ron Warren says Speedway racing. They on well virtually those days when you had Speed Channel and stuff, there was racing on every day, right?
Yep.
There was something on every day. Ron Ward says
Yes.
the Mickey Thompson Stadium trucks, that was the ticket. And that's when Mickey Thompson got killed, when it was at the height of it. Was like Iron Man Stewart and all those guys. That's
I
when it
used to
was
watch them
fun
at
to
Jack
watch.
Murphy Stadium. That was amazing. And then they had the Thunder trucks, and then the Toyotas were like, they weren't like the V8 ones, they were like the V6. That's where Iron Man was.
Mhm.
And then they came out with the V8 Thunder trucks, and then that was right after that is when he got killed.
Well, Buick Smith says, love watching road and track car tests with Bud Linderman
Yep.
on Speed Vision. I loved those. They used to have those too on the TNN, I think, because I watched a bunch of them in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
And those were really good. They were honest reviews of stuff. That's what I really liked about it. It wasn't biased at all. It was very honest reviews. And then the guy had like the best made for radio voice on the planet. the Chevrolet Cavalier, and you're like, holy cow, man, this guy sounds debonair. And then you see him and you're like, oh, that doesn't fit the voice at all. But let's see. Bear Rose Garage says Formula One hill climb in Europe and Iceland blew my mind. First time I seen it, and it still blows me away what they can do with those things.
Agreed.
My favorite was always the Pikes Peak. Pikes Peak had like the 4-wheel drive class, the 2-wheel drive class, the monocoque cars, the regular chassis cars. I mean, it was just so much fun to watch that thing.
Have you seen the Formula One hill climbing though? Have you seen that?
I have not.
Okay. They literally have to drive those cars across water. So because of the paddle tires they're running, they're so light. They look like an old like bucket T, right? And with big paddle tires that are fat and wide, but they're not very tall. And part of the course is that they have to literally floor the car, hit the nitrous, and they literally have to go across a pond. Then they have to go to a gravel pit. They have to stop. They go up the hill, turn sideways, come down the hill, then return. And then they have to go up literally vertical hills and then turn on the vertical hill and then go back up. If you've never seen it, it is the most amazing thing. It's not like there is no road. There's nothing. It's literally cones on the side of this mountain. And it's like, it's a gravel pit with a pond. It is amazing.
I'm only imagining this where they're like, hey, Frank, can you go set up the track for the Formula One hill climb? And then he's like, yeah, sure. And he just drops 2 orange cones. He's like, good to go, Rob.
It's probably more like 15 cones, and they're like using a cannon and they're just putting it on the side of the mountain. And they said, oh, by the way, you got to go across this pond too. That sounds like a great idea.
Well, I haven't watched it. I have to watch it now.
Yeah.
Nick the Van Man says best speed vision program was Victory by Design. I love watching Alan D. Canet running the living piss out of multi-million-dollar cars owned by dukes and people who owned countries.
That was exactly, I love that one, Victory by Design, because he would be driving these guys' cars all nonchalant, but just like, it's $1 million car and he's beating the crap out of it and he's just talking away as he's driving. Dude, that was great. I love that.
Levi's Backyard Performance says, anyone like MAV TV?
100%.
I used to have a subscription to it. When I had cable, I had MAV TV. It was one of the channels that I selected. The problem with like Lucas was like, they sponsor so many motorsport stuff that they literally had like truck and tractor pull racing on, drag boats, and it was like one after the next, after the next, after the next, and you're like, man, when is going to be something that I'm interested in, you know? And for some reason, it just didn't seem to have the same. It doesn't have the same flash and flare as when Dave McClelland and Steve Evans used to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Let's see. Mama M3 wants to know if you got her text last night.
Oh, let's see. Yes, I did. Actually, you know what? And I meant to respond to it. I can actually respond to it now. It's actually a great tech question. If you give me just a second, I'll read it here.
So Buick Smith was responding to Bear Rose saying, just showed my 9-year-old those Iceland trucks the other day. She was amazed when they drove across the lake.
Yeah. It's exactly, and then sometimes they start the race, they're about 15 feet back, and they're at a dead stop in mud that like is up to your waist, and then they have to just hammer it, get enough speed to just float across this lake, and they're so flat out that they're sliding sideways across the top of the water, and it's no control. It's absolutely it's to use their word, it's bonkers. It's bonkers. So here's what Colleen asked me. Tech question: would DLC coated piston tops prevent burning holes in pistons when running too lean? No. DLC is really just for friction. That's what it is. You're putting carbon into something that's going to help it with lubricity because high carbon. You could really get away by putting it on the skirts would help, but on the top it really wouldn't help that. It would be a coating, but a ceramic coating would actually be better because you'd want something to dissipate heat. But it's really for friction is what it's for.
Well, they have that gold ceramic coating that you can put on top of pistons. That does help with like detonation issues.
That will, because it doesn't. You're not absorbing the heat into the piston, then you're not making hot spots. But DLC is just for literally just friction at that point.
Let's see. Most of the old ports Ron Warren says on a new engine with aftermarket heads and higher compression than stock, what's the best way to determine the correct heat range for spark plugs?
Start at the lowest and work your way up.
Well, also, when you get the heads, normally the manufacturer puts a list, like a piece of paper in there, like instructions,
Yep.
right? And they give you a list of spark plugs to start with, and they're generally in the middle of the heat range. And what
And
you want
always
to do
go
is,
too less. Yeah.
and you want to do you want to do a load test on them. You want to get the engine kind of broke in, put a new set of plugs in it, drive it up a hill under load, not full throttle. Then you pull over, pull plugs, and
Yep.
you check how many rings have burned on the threads. Isn't that how everybody does it? Isn't that how you do it, Shane?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And you want to see it burn up, 2 to 3 rings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ideal. Now, if it's not burned up 2 to 3 rings, let's say like it's burned up 6, okay, you got too hot of a plug. You need
Yep.
you need a colder plug, right? If there's no rings burned, then you got too cold of a plug.
Yep.
And you need to bring it up.
And that's why whenever they have a thing like on this car here, I'm running a NGK10, which technically is way too cold for it, but I'm being safe because this engine wasn't built for nitrous. The rings are, but the camshaft and everything else is not. So I did that exact same thing. I went 2 ranges cooler. I actually started with, I think it was an 11. And then I went to a 10. And technically this thing could run a 9. So, but yeah, always start 2 colder. And then exactly that. Just look at the rings when you pull them out as far as the things, and just keep going until you get it, until you get a range, until you get something down there.
I'm surprised you said 2. Do you go 2 to 3 heat ranges colder than what's recommended?
Always.
That's where you start?
That's where I start.
Is it so you can sneak up on it or what?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Because I could never afford to break something. So I had to start really low because plugs were cheap at that point. I would actually use crappy Autolights because at that time they were 99 cents. So I would just
I love Autolights.
yeah. I would buy them because it's $8. So $8 is better than a couple thousand. So I would go 2 colder, start the engine up, break it in, and then after I broke it into the 20-minute, I would look at the plug because I would give you something because it literally started with the 20, came 2000, and you're ranging between 2 and 3. You pull it out and you can look. Okay, am I close? Well, it hasn't even really put any heat on it. I could look at the back strap, and then I would put those plugs back in it, drive it, and do that thing. I would go up a hill, load test it, cycle it up and down. I'd pull over, pull it out. If I'm not even on the threads, I would go 1 more up, and then I would get a thread on it, and then that's why I always went 2s because I could never afford to break it.
Okay. So Levi's Backyard Performance talking about MAV TV, the only racing channel that wasn't Street Outlaws, no prep garbage.
I like that. I agree with him.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Levi, I will make sure that I have clown outfits. He knows what I'm talking about.
So Bear Rose Garage says I still run Autolight plugs. I don't run them since I've been talking about them here lately. They're no longer made in Mexico. They're made in China.
Exactly. I used my very last ones that were made in Mexico. And when Dallas told me that like a few months ago, like actually probably it was the beginning of the year, I went and looked and bought at O'Reilly's, and literally it says China on them. So I went to NGKs. So all my Slant 6 is now NGKs.
That's what I do. I bought a set of Autolights. And the reason why I ran into it is I bought a set of Autolights and I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, man, new box design. It's got a new logo.
Yeah.
Crammed the plugs in there, fired up, had a miss. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Right? Like a miss? How do I got a miss already? So I'm like diagnosing the HEI distributor, the plug wires, and I get to the plug, and I literally take the plug out. And when how you unscrew the plug, like it's only been in there for like 1 heat cycle to get the engine warm. That's it. Take it out, and the ceramic literally cracked through. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's weird. So I take it in and I say, hey, I think this plug was already bad. And, I like literally started it up and went through the heat cycle. Oh, all right. Well, they just give me 1 plug. I put it in there and bring home. Okay, everything's fine. I already had done the break in, but I was just adjusting the carburetor, get the timing set, and then it developed a miss again. And I go to pull that one plug out thinking, oh, it's this plug, right? Let me guess, this sucker's broken now. No, it's another one of the plugs. And so I took it back. They gave me another box of 4, right? And I brought them home, and all I did was put them in the vise, and I twisted them and see what kind of torque it took to shatter that ceramic.
Instant.
And it took like nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's the problem. That's what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
And then I told that's when I was doing the Wednesday night tech talk with Tony, and I told him about it. He was like, no way. I said, look, here's a plug. And on that live show, he side cut one of the plugs to gap it on the side, where you open it up and you put the gap on the side of it.
It broke it.
It split it in half.
Yeah.
Yep. So their ceramics are real weak.
Yeah, I got lucky. I bought a whole bunch of Autolite plugs for the Slant 6s. I bought it in a bulk on when you would get them from like eBay, like when they would have like the whole like 200 plugs. It was like a lot sale, and they were like 50 cents each. It was just this massive sale of spark plugs. And I was like, well, that's the exact plug I need for Slant 6s. So I bought them, and I've been using them for the past 10 years.
Danny Boy says, I always preferred Motorcraft to Autolite. The Motorcraft plugs are good. They're high quality stuff. Okay. Levi's Backyard Performance says, okay, tech. Going from a 3-speed first gear trans brake to a 3-speed 1+2 trans brake, leaving in second.
Okay. So I could glide. So he's using a Turbo 400 glide.
Turbo 400 with a first and second trans brake. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to calculate the new amount of power it will take to get the same result as the first gear brake?
No. Well, there's basically, just take your gear ratio and whatever your torque at your output shaft is and your gear ratio. So if you're having, say, a 245 first or a 154, you just multiply that through that. So that's going to be your output. But here's the thing is that you got to calculate on your converter. The converter is going to work differently with high torque than it will be with a lower torque. And what I mean by lower torque is that when you're in the first gear, there's less torque on the converter in first gear than there will be on second gear. So your stall is going to go way up, and second, it's going to put more load to it. But that's the reason why the 2-speed is typically faster in an 1/8 mile than the 3-speed, is because you can put more torque to it and carry that gear longer and get the more magic out of the converter than you can with, like, say, a 3-speed if you have a power adder. That's the reason why I went to a glide in my car, is I can hit more power to it longer without shifting gears and keep that power carrying the car forward longer. So technically, yes, you just multiply the gear ratio, and that's what it's going to be without the converter. The converter is going to be the anomaly. So you would need to know your stall, and then whatever the K value is. So like if you got a 1.1 K value, you're going to multiply that through the converter, and it's going to be higher on the second gear, but it's going to be technically a wash. But what the thing is you can put more power down longer in second gear than you can in first gear because of the torque multiplication and how far it's going to go out.
So I'm going to take 820 at this point because I'm going to do it right now. This is where switch pitch would be the freaking most awesome thing that you ever had, because you could literally tailor the converter to what you needed with a switch.
For everybody, that was 80 minutes. 80 minutes for the switch pitch.
Yeah, but that's what it would be ideal for this. Is if you had a trans brake in first and second, huh?
If this is Pee-wee's Playhouse, whenever you say switch pitch, we need to scream, remember?
That's the magic word. Yeah. But it would get kind of old with just each individual show being the same word. Right. Yeah. You should pick a new word every time. Tonight's secret word is Buick. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Let's see. Nick the Van Man, tech question, DLC coated rocker shafts.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You can do that too. Absolutely. Anything that there's a friction device, high load, can be DLC coated. I mean, literally, you could do the whole valve train. You could, but the cost is going to start going out of control. It took us a very long time to get the cost under control for just doing. I'll grab one here. For just doing the lifter like this. To have just a DLC coated on that one spot rather than the rest, that's what took the longest time. So that way it doesn't flake. That was the biggest thing. Most DLC coating is going to go all the way up to the side, and because you're going to have a, it's a coating and it's a measurable
just peeled
coating.
off.
That's where it gets tricky, because then you got to coat the whole lifter, and that's why it's been so expensive for all these years. And the trick is to get it just on the one edge, so that way you have a chamfer that doesn't flake and doesn't flick off. And that was the whole
so do they coat it first and then you machine the lifter, or
no, it's machined and then it's coated. But that's
Okay.
the thing, is that because it's on an edge, how close can you get to that edge before it flakes off?
Yeah.
If it does flake off. But ours is not flaking. That's what I'm saying, is that was the trick, is how big of a chamfer and how close can you make that?
Buick Smith says, never thought of looking at the threads, always ran so the carbon was burned off the middle of the turn down on the backstrap.
Well,
That's for
your
timing, dude. Yeah.
That's your timing. That's not your heat range.
Yeah, your heat range is the threads.
Mm-hmm.
So when your timing is correct, you want to be in the middle of that turn on the backstrap. But the threads tell you the heat range. And what's weird about it is, like, these are things that you learn from nitrous. Like, if Andy Wood's still in here, Andy Wood could probably read a plug from across the pits.
Me too,
right?
man. Doing nitrous, man, as long as I'm telling you, I could look at a plug and tell you exactly.
I guess I should say, when you're poor and you run nitrous, that's when you learn how to read some plugs.
And
right?
you know what plugs that you can put in white distilled vinegar overnight and reuse.
Yeah,
I've done that too.
Mine would be, I would change one plug in the leanest cylinder in the engine every time.
Oh,
every pass. I would change one plug and read the one plug. I leave the rest in there based on what I was thinking sound.
At No Name Nationals, I changed the plugs 5 times.
Oh,
do you know how many sets of new plugs were put into that engine?
0, huh?
Because they were all white distilled vinegar ran, and I've been using the same plug over and over and over. You just clean them off because they're just basically getting carbon fouled.
Let's see. Okay, Fabrace Mod Repeat says, about the same everyone figured out the auto light. About the same time everyone figured out the auto lights are made of Chinese, and the NGK price shot up.
Exactly.
Well, that's because they knew the competition was gone.
Yep.
Right. They sold out. So Michael Schmidt says, Ben Alameda says pretty much the NGKs are the best for reading the tune. The others have seemingly inconsistent metallurgy. Thus, the readings are different for the same engine due to manufacturing, not the tune.
Yeah, the coloring changes. It's the coating on the threads, and the NGK is it's always repeatable. Every single plug will do the same thing, but on the other ones, you never know what you're going to get. I agree with him 100%. That's why I've always went to NGKs when it's drag racing and nitrous and whatever.
Well, NGKs is what I ended up going to when I started having problems with the auto lights. It was like, nah, I'm going over to the next best plug. So I went over to NGKs, the one that I considered next best, and now it seems to be the best plug. So, I tell you what, I wish before all this stuff went haywire and I was building 455 Suburban, and I had the tune so right on that 455 Suburban that when it started knocking, and it was my fault that it was knocking, I didn't check the roundness of the bores, the big ends on the rods. I didn't check them. I just took them apart, crammed it in there, and next thing you know, one's loose. But it was because it was out of round. So anyway, I took it apart, and I had those plugs laying on the table, and we were doing Wednesday night tech talk with your uncle, and your uncle comes in, and he's like, golly, who's been running these plugs and then what? I said, man, that's the Suburban. He's like, you got dead on, man. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm pretty proud of that. They looked like the toasted marshmallow, man. It was just like the perfect color.
Good night, Miss Catchy. Have a good night. Thank you for coming around.
Michael Schmidt says there are millions of fake parts.
True.
True. I'm telling you, this isn't the first go round with the Chinese. If everybody remembers, like back in the 70s and early 80s, they made a bunch of fake oil filters, and they were like flooding the counters at like Kmart and stuff.
Yep.
And it was like 1/3 the price, like 40-cent oil filter.
Exactly.
Okay? But they cut them open and there wasn't even a filter inside.
Yeah. Some had like pieces of paper in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like toilet paper roll kind of
Yes.
deal.
It's like a toilet paper roll. Exactly.
Bear Roast Garage says, I got lucky and still have 2 more sets of old auto lights, but NGK is my high pocket choice from there. I usually do the NGK now. Is pretty much about the only thing I ever do.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'll
Bear
order them
Rose,
if I have
I'm
to.
with you on this. I actually, I do have some of my old NGK, I'm sorry, auto lights that I took out, and I did keep them just in case. But yeah, I'm with you on this. I have some old auto lights that I just cleaned up.
Michael Robert Embry says, Champion 29 or 295 C57CX racing plug.
Backup
Correct heat
plug. I know
range.
exactly.
Correct heat range is critical in maintaining peak performance throughout the race.
Agreed. In fact, that's the exact plug that I used to run in my this race car in the Cookie Monster. It's basically it's a back cut style plug. So it's a back cut strap, cuts like this, right? And but when the Champion plug was getting the same thing, it was getting incorrect readings. I went to an NGK, but that's exactly what was going on.
Let's see. I'm liking this. Danny Boyd says, now you're messing with the son of a switch pitch.
Yeah.
Let's see. Bear Rose Garage. Don't feel bad, Dallas. I don't. They got me last night at Kim and Buff's live when I talked about the switch pitch we did on our trike. Yeah. Well, I guess that must be within our community, the buzzword, huh? The buzz
switch
phrase.
pitch. We all got to scream when you say switch pitch, right?
Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Schmitz, for heat range, how do you read threads? I watched many YouTubes or many videos, but it's not clear what to actually look for. Okay. So when your threads are threaded into the spark plug hole, generally the last 2 or 3 are in the cylinder, right? And what you're looking for is when metal gets hot, it actually starts to discolor. And that's what you're looking at is there will be a drastic change in color on the actual like end of the plug, right? The threaded part of the plug. It'll change in color. Sometimes it'll be like a little bit of a blue. Sometimes it'll be a little bit of a black. It kind of depends on what fuel you're running, how much carbon is, how much oil is leaking by and the guides and stuff like that.
But you're going to see it. It's distinct.
It'll be a 100% difference in color.
Yeah. I do that on road cars, not necessarily on a drag car, because there's not enough heat put into it for that long. You'll basically just see it on the rim, but on a road car, you will definitely see it on the threads.
You have to pull the load. You have to pull the load like up a hill, right?
A long load.
Yeah. And it has to get hot. It has to build heat in the plug. And that's what you're looking for. Okay. Let's see. He's Buick 350 V8 Power says toilet paper oil filter insert. Remember that.
It's true. Yeah. I saw it. I worked on one of a few of the cars that had that come in, sucked it right through.
Let's see. Andy Wood or Nick the Van Man saying, thank you for your Flex Fan dyno video. I watched it and it made me feel better about running a Flex Fan. I can live with 6 horsepower.
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see. Dylan Levi from Levi's Backyard Performance says LS AC Delco oil filters are now not good. The actual filter collapses. Friend killed 2 engines because of it. Chinese garbage. Jeez, dude. The world is coming to an end.
Just, what I normally run on the filters is that I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, but if you look at the particulates and how they grab them, the Mobile One filter is the best at grabbing high particulates and still filtering. And then on my drivers, I run the Wicks, and I've never had an issue, and I cut them open every single time. And I run the Wicks 51806, and it's got an internal standpipe on all the Slant 6s. So, and it's a really high medium. It's like a 10 micron filter. So it's a really good filter.
All right. Buick Smith says, Shane, I've been meaning to ask you this. Did one of your relatives work on a movie car called Bellflower, a 72 Buick or 72 Buick called the Medusa?
Well, I mean, me and my brother both worked on mini cars out in California, and we in the Valencia area, in the Saugus area. I'm not going to confirm or deny, so I can just tell you that I did work on a lot of stuff out there, and I did work on a lot of cars out in the Saugus and area. So yes, that's all I'm going to say.
Let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance says PRI check in. Who all's going? Michael Robert Embry says he'll be there. Shane's going to be there. Professor P. Let's see.
Yeah, we're leaving tomorrow morning, and we're going to be there. Now, I have a lot of stuff to do on Thursday, so I'll be indisposed of. But Friday, I'm going to be on the showroom floor. I technically won't be in the building. I'm going to be incognito, so I can go around and look at other products and so forth. But yeah, I will definitely be there all day Friday, and then we're leaving Friday night.
Let's see. All right. Michael Schmidt says, follow up. Do we look at the exposed threads or the threads in the head about the exposed threads? You're looking at the last couple of threads on the plug before it starts to go into the back strap.
Yep.
Right. So it's like the last couple of threads. They'd be the first threads that you put in the head.
Do I have any here? I think maybe you're throwing them away. I had some and I would show you, but maybe that'll be a good video to make a little short at one time.
Oh. Buick 350 V8 Power says, did you miss the TA valve covers for small block Buick? $80 a few comments back.
Oh.
I did not see that.
I didn't see that.
Right. I wonder if that's something that came up on YouTube and I didn't see it. Because we're doing this. Generally what happens is we do this through StreamYard, so you can have multiple people on here and we can do this Q&A and then push it over to YouTube. So I don't see what happens over on the tube.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so if anyone posts something, we don't see it.
So go ahead and throw it up here because I didn't see it. I'm surprised somebody's selling a set of TA valve covers for $80. They're usually like $600.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Uni Motorsports Garage says, I learned it's not that bad, Nick. Okay, so he's talking to Nick the Van Man. Still have V-groove pulleys and the belt stays on at 7,500 RPM. Life is
I agree. I have the same thing. I shift this thing at 75, $8,000, and it's still now it's a deep groove, and I'm running a 15 belt in it. So instead of running a 17 belt, I run a 15. So the belt's inside the groove, and I run it not very tight, obviously. So that way, when it expands and is going over, it's not pulling things in. So yeah, I still run a V groove, and it's fine.
Let's see. I run a serpentine. Well, I had to run a serpentine on my T-Bird, but I won't even run a belt on my Buick stuff. Probably because it's so awesome. It doesn't need accessories.
But I like an alternator on a race car because your car runs better. The ignition system runs better when I have 2 batteries in this car, and I can tell when I light the alternator off, the car just runs better.
Well, let's see. Buick Smith says, indirect and Levi, it was -4 degrees Fahrenheit today in western North Dakota, -16 with wind chill. What is the temp where you are at?
It's 50 outside.
Yeah, it's probably 44 degrees right now, something like that. Wind chill, we're probably looking at a freezing like 34 degrees, maybe.
Let's take a look. Well, it dropped since I came in here. It's 38 right now with wind chill. It just dropped again, so it's dropping fast. It's going to be 28 tonight. That sounds miserable. Miserable.
Well, I don't do that. That's Midwest stuff. I don't deal with that. And then he's up in North Dakota. It's even worse. That was the only time I ever drove across the country. What is it, like 70? Is 70 the one that goes through like Reno, Nevada and stuff? And comes out of like San Francisco. Was that right? 70? I think so. I drove across on 70 one time, and we got to like, I don't remember where we were at. Montana? No. maybe a little bit further east. I don't know, maybe South Dakota. And it had this like, I don't know what you want to call it. It was in late November, and there was like this weather anomaly that happened. We literally were driving along, had t-shirts on, and we're in this like 97 Ford truck. So it's like it's a F-250. So it was the old body style Ford, just cruising right along, talking and chatting. And like all of a sudden that we see this like definitive line in the sky, right? The front. And we drive across this thing. And I mean, literally it frosted the outside of the window when we drove across this front. Right. And all of a sudden it got so cold in the truck, like turn the heater on. Like, dang, it must have dropped 20 degrees. No, it dropped 48 degrees across that front. 48 degrees. I'd never seen anything like it. We got out of the truck and I had a t-shirt on. And it was like, oh gosh, I didn't need to get a jacket. It's like 0 out here.
0.
I'd never seen anything like that. It was such a huge difference. Okay. Paul Paul PJ. Okay. Which is a better street carb, an Edelbrock Performer or the AVS?
Okay. There is actually the Performer is the AVS, and what you think is the AVS is the AVS 2. So the Edelbrock Performer, which is AVS, that basically is like your old Carter. So when you go into full secondaries, as vacuum increases, it's going to open. The AVS 2, it has a spring for the secondaries, so that way you can adjust how soon that comes in. Where the AVS is just set, the AVS 2 you can set it. Here's the thing: is that the AVS, the standard AVS, is a very dumb carburetor, but it works very well with very little tuning. Out of the box, it's going to be really preset, and it's going to work on most applications. The AVS 2 gives you a little tunability, so that way you can control how the secondaries come in. So you can tighten the spring up or loosen up how you want to come in. If that's something you want to do, then get the AVS 2. If it's something you want to put, set it and forget it, just get the regular AVS. And what that is, you'll look at the top and it'll have a door on it that you can adjust for it. They used to be called the Thunder series. You remember those? But yeah, it's just an AVS 2 style. I would run just a regular AVS.
It looked like a Carter with a quadrajet secondary air door.
Yes. So
that's really what it is.
Yeah. I think one of the part numbers is like 1407. That's the style of carburetor, or 1406. That's like a 600. Then you have the 1405, I think is 600 without vacuum secondaries or whatever. I don't remember all the part numbers, but I know 1407 is a 750 without a choke. So that's the style of carburetor that I would get if you don't want to do any real tuning on it. You just want to throw it on and drive it. And I have one of that. I have that style carburetor on my Slant 6, and I trust it enough to where I drive that thing across the country. In fact, Thanksgiving, I just drove it with me and my kids in it to Dallas, Texas, throughout the night, stayed there for 3 days, and then drove it straight back. So, and it's my daily driver. So, and I have never.
Dude, so they're going to do the AVS 3, which is like a thermoquad, where it has like all the good parts from the Carter, where it's got the two bowls and then the big secondaries, except for it doesn't have the plastic body.
It's called the VRS carburetor.
Well, that's why don't they make one for the street that's totally bitching? It's like a quadrajet mixed with a thermoquad mixed with a what is that carburetor you just mentioned? I can't remember. VRS. Where it has like 3 circuits or 4 circuits in it, to where it actually works really, really well, but it's a street carb.
The VRS is a street carb. People drive that thing. I'm telling you, that thing works amazing on the street.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Buick Smith is saying the cold weather will be good for showing the reindeer this weekend with my friend from the Drayton Reindeer Ranch for the Christmas show.
Yeah. So
here's something that's interesting. Bear Rose Garage says,
yes, that's the
Paul PJ. If you are in high altitude and cool weather and need the separate fast idle performer, is the Performer is the best choice. The ABS2 has the fast idle tied to the choke. Huh.
Yeah, I didn't look at where he was. I didn't ask where he was at in altitude, but yeah, definitely. I don't have that on my car, and that's why I drive the wife's the Beaver during the wintertime, because it literally has a choke, and it's 1, 2, start, and I can drive away.
Well, Nick the Van Man says he uses Mobile One for initial break-in and K&N's after for my performance stuff, and Motorcraft FL1As for drivers. The FL1A is like my go-to filter for like just about anything.
Yep. The Mobile One is a very expensive filter, but it works the absolute best. There's plenty of people out here on the YouTubes. If you watch the filter and particulates, as far as they use like carbon dust or carbine and graphite, super fine, and they just basically keep flooding the filter with this super fine media, and until either one it stops up, and then how much flow
I
rate
did watch that one. Yeah, I watched that one.
And the Mobile One wins every single time.
So Tall Garage has just jumped in here, and he says, I've always wanted one of them Ford inline carbs. And what's kind of ironic is he's like the guy that likes the Holley EFI stuff, right? And it's like, dude, go get you one of them Ford inline carbs, one of them 4100s, and put it on your, because to be honest with you, no one said that's not allowed in that 333 class.
Yeah. All carbs welcome.
Yeah. All right. Well,
speaking of carbs, did I tell you guys this? I'm getting some Predator carbs tomorrow.
Really?
Yes.
At PRI?
At PRI.
Sweet.
I have a person who's going to be. They are
Don't
basically. Yeah. Well, two of them.
Give me just a second. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. So this person's getting these, taking these Predators off, and he can't rebuild them. He doesn't know how to use them or anything like that. And I told him, I was like, look, I've messed with Predators, and I call them the magic box. The one issue that I've ever had with a Predator is the float, is because it's only got one needle and seat on them. So you always had to increase the needle and seat. And if you ran it on too big of an engine, it just would starve the bowl. You couldn't fill it up fast enough. So that's where I learned about running 150 thousandths needle and seat was on the Predator carbs, and I used to run those on my my small blocks. And the Predator carb is amazing because it's got a variable venturi on it. It's just they work really good. So they work really good on top of blowers too. Great mixers.
Well, too bad they're no longer being manufactured. Dang, why don't Edelbrecht make that one?
The Predator?
Hell yeah. Why not?
No. And Danny Boy, they do have an enrichment circuit. They got a accelerator pump on the side. They didn't have a lot of idle circuits. So I did have a Predator that had an idle circuit on the top, super finicky and super touchy. And how the trap doors worked is they work on a spring, and the spring goes directly to a cam, and the cam is what meters the fuel that goes right across the top. So it was very, very touchy. But if you could get those things when you got off the throttle, if you got them to slam shut, the thing would idle. If you didn't get them to slam shut, the idle was like 2,000.
Huh. Okay. Nick the Van Man says, for anyone curious, I want manual steering on the Econoline van. I'm running a serpentine standard rotation, ASP underdrive water pump pulley, and using a Summit Racing alternator bracket. Works well.
Good.
Dude, don't forget to convert that thing to a 3G alternator. That hopefully you're not running the 86, like whatever that was, 80 amp alternator, I think, something like that. The 3G is like so easy on that thing to convert to. Just use an alternator for like a 95 Cougar with a 3.8 V6. See,
Miss Catchy, absolutely. I'll bring him out here now. In fact, probably next Wednesday.
Is this what you're answering here? A tech show on it, please?
Yeah. In fact, let's see. I'm going to see when is Christmas and all that stuff. I'll see when our last live is going to be. Next week is going to be probably our last live, because Christmas is on the 25th. We're definitely not going to be on that, and then we'll probably do one on the 1st, right?
No, I won't be doing that. I'm going to be on road tripping. I got to go down to
Oh,
Florida, and I got to fix Jack the Giant Killer Buick 300, which
okay.
I have to helicoil all of the intake manifold bolt holes.
Hmm.
They're just, I guess they're just too old. It's pulling the threads out on them, and I don't know if it's because I used the ARP studs. I don't know, but it was the only way I could make all the spacers work.
So we'll do next week, and then we'll take 2 weeks off then.
That'll be that'll feel weird.
Yeah, right. I'll feel lost on Wednesday. Am I supposed to be doing something? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, then, yeah, no problem. So I'll bring the carbs on next week, and then whatever I can find from PRI, and we'll basically just do a big long tech if we have of car stuff next Wednesday.
Well, and here's Tall Garage saying there's a guy that casts his own intakes for those inline Ford carbs here on the tube. Very
Sweet.
neat. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know that. I might have to look that up.
Yeah, and you know why the small Ford engines are the hardest to keep fuel distribution on a single carburetor, and that's the reason why they went to a long, skinny carburetor. On that is because the outer cylinders are the hardest to keep fuel on a
It
small
was
Ford.
the small Ford when they're fuel injected was even hard.
Yeah.
The injectors at the freaking, and it's just because so that tells you right there, it's all the air distribution in it.
Mm-hmm.
But we used to run on Ford is timed differently. So the passenger side is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 on the driver's side, right? But 1 and 4 and 5 and 8 used to get 30 pound per hour injectors, which were the outside cylinders because they had the most air. And then the middle Ford would get 24 pounders. And that's how you would keep even distribution on them.
Yeah. When we want to see if a carburetor is good to go or an intake's good to go, you put it on a Ford. If it works on a small block Ford, then it'll pretty much work on anything.
Yeah. I don't doubt that.
It's the absolute truth.
Long, it's that weird long runner.
Well, it's a small, and then the FE. FE is terrible because of that big ass intake. It's so long for the outer two, right?
Okay. Buick Smith says, Dallas, that would make a great video for your channel. Yeah, it would. It definitely would. My son and I are driving all the way down to Florida, and then I'm taking him. It's going to be like 70 degrees down there. I'm going to take him to Top Golf because he's totally into this golf phase right now. But
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take him to Top Golf, but we're going to fix Jack the Giant Killer. Let's see. All right. Michael Schmidt says, wanted dinosaur item. If anybody has a source for a vintage Allen distributor testing machine, let me know. I'm actively running from High Tech. I really want a Sun distributor machine. I do. Yeah. And like 2 Hex Jeff scored one, and I'm totally jealous of it. But dude, we're winding down. We got like 10 minutes left. Is there anything super duper tech that you wanted to talk about?
I'm going to be I got my triangulated forelink on this, so I'm going to be making a video about anti-squat and squat and how that all works and angles and we're going to be triangulating things, and we're going to be waving hands in different directions. And but yeah, I'm trying to get ahead of the game, so that way there's a race January 11th at Sykeston. It's an outlaw street car class, so I'm going to go.
Is that the one where they run the backwards?
Yeah,
track?
But it's all street cars, only street cars.
All right. So Michael Robert Embry says, bring vacuum secondary carbs, Shane. I still prefer the Holley HP and old 3310 carbs. Just add a REO 50cc accelerator pump conversion kit.
Yeah.
And he says Oak Island equals 0.
Yes, and there was they had a major fur there. Now it was hard to count. I got the 7 or 5, so it was either a 7 fur or a 5 fur. So there's your Oak Island update. And guess what? Still nothing. They haven't found shit.
They haven't found nothing. Really?
They had a wall
interesting.
Collapse. Yeah, they had a wall collapse, and they think they have finally found the flood channels. After 12 years or whatever they've been doing for. So still nothing. 5 or 7 for how you want to look at it. There's your Oak Island update. I watched it last night.
I stopped watching that show so long ago because I realized that we're never going to find anything. And that was
I'm invested. I want them to admit. I want to see them say there's nothing here, and I'm going to be like, "Told you."
they're going to do a 7 for to tell you that there's nothing there.
Did we just do this for 12 years? Was there
We
nothing
did.
here?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Never mind. He's talking to somebody. Here we go. Miss Cadgy, what grinding paste would you guys reckon is needed to get the mirror finish on FE for Cometic gaskets? Oh, dude. Okay. Cometic head gaskets are, if you're not familiar with them, they're finicky, right?
Mhm.
And Miss Cat G is aware here, but they're finicky. You got to have an RA finish, essentially like freshly
32.
machined finish.
Yeah, I think it's 32. I think it's 32 or 64. I can't remember the number, but it's actually almost mirror finish on your aluminum and your steel.
Okay, what grinding paste would you guys reckon is needed to get the mirror finish on an FE for Cometic gaskets? Okay, and so I'm assuming he's talking the block and the head. Right?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go with both cast iron. This is how I do it, and you guys will freaking laugh at me and think I'm freaking crazy. Okay, I don't use anything like that to buff it. I use, the green scrubby pads.
Yep.
Okay, there is one of those like that's a roll-off disc that you could put in there. That's a green scrubby pad,
Mhm.
and I have one that I have worn out, and I just dip it in old motor oil, and I freaking go through and do the block, and it comes out like when you wipe it down, it's going to look like it's new, and that's what I do. If I don't take it to the machine shop and I have it decked or milled, that's exactly how I do it. So I mean, I know it's not what you want to hear,
Yeah.
but
No,
you can do it with a piece of glass and some like
yeah.
1,000 grit sandpaper.
Well, I use 1,000 grit sandpaper and glass, like he was just saying. I also get lapping compound too, if I find an area, valve grinding lapping compound.
Yeah, well, you know what? Aunt D brings up a awesome thing here. Oak Island found a contract on Discovery Channel. That's what they found. You're right.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Dan
I think
Boyd
why
said,
they're doing this, now, I'm going to go back to this Oak Island thing real quick. Last one. The reason why they're doing this and why they're allowing this is so that way, after this is all done, there's going to be no more drilling on Oak Island. They're going to cut it all off, so that way they can definitively say there is absolutely nothing here. It's been a ruse this whole time. It was, hey, look over here, so you don't see where the real treasure is at, where it's been hidden, or if it was already gone somewhere else. So it's been working for the past 300 years.
Danny Boyd says Al Capone's vault and Geraldo Rivera. That was the same
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Same thing. Okay. Miss Catchy says diamond stuff or valve grinding paste. You can go with fine valve grinding paste.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, 1,000 grit sandpaper, and even if you want to be cheap, if you just want to get like a good, like a sanding block and 1,000 grit sandpaper,
It works.
and wet and dry that crap with some WD-40, it's going to come out freaking fantastic.
I do all my cam journal, my crank journals with 1,000 grit sandpaper, WD-40, and a shoestring, and I roll it back and forth. And I'm telling you, it's a mirror finish. I go 800, and then I go 1,000.
Michael Schmidt says Pertronics evidently moved away from Los Angeles to Kentucky, Tennessee. Does anybody know if there was a change of ownership or was it acquired or just moved? Just wondering. I do know that California was beating up the automotive manufacturers something fierce out there for years. And I would not be surprised if it wasn't a change of ownership. It was just a change of location so that they didn't get taxed to death.
Exactly.
Let's see. Buick Smith says, didn't they uncover the entrances to the flood tunnels in the third season when they built the wall off the shore? Why didn't they follow those damn things back? Makes me so angry.
I agree. I was like, well, you found the entrances. Great. Oh, they found all this like coconut, material, right? This stuff. I was like, well, perfect. You found it. Just follow it. They didn't. I'm like, well, that's when I realized, this might be crap. And that was 7 years ago. I'm still watching the damn thing.
Let's see. KJ Keeley says all MLS head gaskets or just Cometic. The only one I'm really aware of that requires for a certain RA finish is Cometic.
Well, a lot of them do. Like a lot of the manufacturers, the Gen 3 Hemi from the factory comes with an MLS, multi-layer gasket is all it's meaning. And so they can get different thicknesses on them. But they all require a certain finish just for that. So it allows it to move around is what it's for.
Oh,
It doesn't
really?
grab. See, the other one's like a blue, a Felpro blue. The reason for the rough finish is so that way it grabs the gasket. Where the MLS, you don't want it to
that
grab.
totally sounds like a freaking awesome YouTube video. Like, hey, one side of this motor, we're going to have the RA finish recommended by the manufacturer. The other side of this motor, we don't have any RA finish recommended by anybody. We pulled the head off and we're just going to put it back on, except for we're going to use copper coat. We're going to use all the sorcery tricks available out there, right?
All the
Head gasket in the
massage oils and
can,
lubes.
everything like that on this one side.
Yeah.
On the other side, it has everything you need. Which one leaks first?
Okay, but here's the caveat. Is it going to be a stock running engine or are you going to put a power adder to it?
Just stock engine. But I mean, I guess
It'll
what
be
is
fine.
that?
It won't make a difference. Here's the thing is that the MLS gasket, as soon as you put power to it, that's when you got to have the finish because it will find a hole and it will come right out. That's the thing. Or high compression or high RPM. Those two things do it.
Oh, here you go. Tax. So Bear Rose is saying change in tax obligations. I'm sure that's what it was. That's what I meant by them getting beat up.
Yeah.
Was California was freaking brutal on taking taxes.
Yes.
Let's see. Tall Garage says I made wheel studs for 10 years. I really should find a job with ARP. I don't know if they're anywhere close to you, dude. Is it ARP like in Kansas or Missouri?
No, I know her P1.1. They're in Missouri.
Levi's Backyard Performance says, Ken, you're the reason I broke all those Honda studs. It wasn't the drifting into things going from gravel to concrete sideways. It was you. So, all right. Well, now that the weird hour has begun.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm gonna say here we are cutting it down to the last 2 minutes, I guess. But thanks for stopping by and checking things out tonight. Don't forget to check out John Wilburn on Friday night. He does a live at 7 Central. And then right
Tony.
after is, Tony's Hot Rod Garage is immediately thereafter. So 9 o'clock.
And one more shout out. I want to tell you guys go over to Buff Del Campo on Tuesday, man. They always bring up pictures of cars and talk about it. And it's actually fun. It's entertaining. You should go check them out too. I think they're at 7 Central on Buff Del Campo on Tuesday nights. It's really fun.
But otherwise, that's pretty much it for tonight's Wednesday night show. So we appreciate y'all being here. And I guess we'll see you next week. And then we're taking a 2-week stint. Is that right?
Yeah, 2-week stint. So we'll see you probably after that, 2025. So next year is going to be next week's going to be our last one for the year.
Whoa! And then we'll see you next year. And guess what? I still won't be divorced. So I'll see y'all later.
See you later.